So hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Optimizing Your Online Storefront. On the call, we'll be covering best practices for optimizing your e-commerce solution, how the industry is venturing into omnichannel solutions, and the different integration and connector options that Acumatica can handle. I'm Strati Moustakis, I'm PC Bennett's content marketing specialist, and I'm joined today by Yuri Karpenko, our Director of E-commerce Solutions. Yuri's our in-house subject matter expert when it comes to assisting our clients in setting up their online storefronts. And then we also have Ingrid Getson on the call today, who is an independent consultant and designer. She previously worked with PC Bennett's client RM Westy to set up their brand Van Cafe's big commerce site, and now assists her clients in building and optimizing their websites and online storefronts. Together, Yuri and Ingrid have a wealth of experience in building e-commerce solutions, optimizing the site's performance, and connecting them to businesses' back-end ERPs, namely Acumatica, which is great because our clients are on the call today who all leverage Acumatica, so we'll really be able to get into some nitty-gritty topics. And we're so fortunate to have their brains on this call today, and it's going to lead to a great discussion around how you, our PC Bennett clients, can get the most out of your sites and create strong efficiencies and how it interacts with Acumatica. One thing that's important to note is that today's call, we really want today's call to be as meaningful as possible for our audience. So please, if you have any questions around e-commerce, omnichannel, or the responses that Ingrid or the topics that Ingrid and Yuri cover, please just throw any questions into either the Q&A feature or the chat. This is just going to help ensure that you guys get the most relevant content possible on this call. So again, don't hesitate to send anything in around your e-commerce endeavors. And so with that, Yuri and Ingrid, thank you for joining us today, and let's kick this call off.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Cool.
Shreddy.
Yeah,
Thanks all for joining.
Sure, yeah, we appreciate everyone. So let's just kind of start off. Yuri, can you please talk about the relationship between ERP systems and e-commerce? These are both huge endeavors for companies to undertake, and they speak to each other constantly. So a refresher on this connection would be a great way to start this conversation, I think.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think all of us on this call know about the relationships between ERP and e-commerce. They can be complicated, but in terms of Acumatica ERP, and if you are using one of the natively integrated e-commerce solutions, we know that they are integrated pretty nice and they talk to each other in real time or almost real time. So yeah, I feel like I don't even have to say that, but ERP is our backend system that is a system of records for a lot of our financial, customer, sales order data, purchase order data. All of that is in our ERP system, while e-commerce is our online presence. For some companies, it's just one of the sales channels for them. For others, it is the sales channel. So the whole business is done in that e-commerce solution. But what we see has been happening for a couple decades now is that e-commerce is been trending quite significantly. There is barely any company today that doesn't have an e-commerce platform that they use for promoting their business or for selling their product.
Yeah, that's great. And so for this next question, I think we can start with a response from Ingrid, and then Yuri, if you have anything to add, that'd be great. But what are some recent steps that you, Ingrid, have taken to help your clients optimize their online storefronts? What does that look like for you?
Sure. I think the main thing of optimizing your online store, obviously, is the customer journey. So you want to look at everything that the customer would look for and look at. So the ease of use, your overall design and your aesthetics, clear call to action. You're directing them in their journey on where you want them to go, really what products you want them to buy. So you have featured products and top products right on the home page, contact info easily available, it's mobile optimized. So that's kind of the basics and what you look at for that main big picture of your e-commerce site. And then you drill down into different parts of your e-commerce. So your product pages, your checkout, your marketing, your product pages, they have good images that represent your products well, and do they load fast? Do you have strong descriptions that speak to your customer? Do you have cross-sells and upsell techniques or plugins in there? Do you bundle products? One thing people think about or miss a lot is clearly stating their shipping. on the product pages before they get to the checkout process because of the bounce rate that you can see on checkout pages. And then speaking of the checkout pages, really looking at one-page checkouts, the login abilities, not forcing someone to log into checkout. Is your company thinking about buy now, pay later solutions and, Klarna, that kind of thing? And then are you giving personalized shopping experiences? So I've been working a lot with clients with that, looking through their transactional emails, their abandoned cart series, their promotions. Do you enable chat? Do you use cookies to serve previously viewed products when they come back? That kind of thing. And then, really drilling down into SEO. I do a lot of SEO for clients, and the ROI on SEO is difficult because you can't really see it. But your site speed, your optimized images, your tags, your metadata, ADA compliance, that kind of thing. So I work with a lot of clients on the full gamut of what happens on their e-commerce site and how that's optimized for the customer.
Yeah, that's great. And then Yuri, I think, is there anything you'd like to add kind of in terms of optimizing the integration between ERP solutions and e-commerce?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Shruti. Because when we're thinking about e-commerce, it's not only what the client sees when they visit our site, but also what is the overall experience, right? So think about a situation when you have an e-commerce site, but you also sell in your store, in your physical store, or they can place orders over the phone. Now, can we make it so that when they log into their account, they could see their orders that they placed offline? Wouldn't that be a better experience for the client? Yeah, absolutely it would, because that would be like a customer portal for them, regardless of the sales channel they used to communicate with you in the past. So that's one thing that we often do with implementations of the connector is we enable the bidirectional sync for orders so that the orders that exist in Acumatica also flow back into e-commerce, even if those orders were placed somehow differently, not through e-commerce in the first place. So that's one thing. Another thing is, and Ingrid mentioned about that, about the shipping methods and how the checkout experience looks like. Well, the checkout experience for your B2B and B2C customers, if you're serving both of those groups, could be and probably should be different.
Mm-hmm.
So customizing that flow is another thing. The B2B customers often need to add some additional data on their checkout, like PO numbers, or some very specific nodes, or be able to choose between 100 of different ship to addresses, while B2C clients might not need all of that. So trying to find out what is important for your customer group and tailor into that your checkout process, your customer journey, as Ingrid said, that's a big win. And we have seen that Ingrid can testify to that from the VenCafe perspective. She has been doing the heavy lifting there. All of those changes, they do help win more business over time.
Yeah, and so this is you brought up VenCafe, and so I do kind of want to dive into that a little bit. I think there is just kind of some experience on this call that both of you have with setting up our client VenCafe site. And so I guess Ingrid, from your perspective on the client side, what was kind of that experience in terms of setting? It was a BigCommerce site, is that right?
Yep.
And so what was that experience really like for you in terms of getting that BigCommerce site up and making sure that it was running functionally? And then Yuri, if you could talk to kind of how it connected to Acumatica, I think that would just kind of be a nice little way to kind of talk about your guys' experience working in this world.
Sure. We had a lot of change management going on at VenCafe when we made the transition. We had a lot of archaic systems happening. And so it was really rewriting the process and reimagining really that process for the customer on the e-commerce side. We were coming from an old website where most of the people could see the website and then needed a call. We had a lot of products that weren't really functional. It was a warehouse space and a manufacturing space. So we bundled a lot of things. We had different products going in different places. It was really intricate and there was a lot of detail. And we really needed to rewrite our processes. And it gave us, moving to BigCommerce and Acumatica gave us an option to really look at how we wanted things to function and how we wanted things to change from an operational standpoint, as well as for the customer. You know, we went from not being able to sell one of our most popular and profitable products online to being able to sell it online. I mean, and then that was no small feat. It's a really, really, again, really intricate product with a lot of different attributes and a lot of different things. So, I mean, a lot changed for our business, and a lot changed for everyone that I was working with there. And just planning that out was a really big part that we could have even done more with. And working with Yuri in the connector with Acumatica was huge in making sure things functioned how we wanted them to function, and the connection between Acumatica and BigCommerce, and how that customer journey translated to our operational journey and our processes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, Ingrid, because when we implement something like this, we have two big systems. They need to talk to each other. And then each solution has its own limitations, right? The e-commerce, be it BigCommerce or Shopify, they have their strength and they have their limitations. And what happens sometimes is that we try to make it do things that it was not designed to do. Or we can do that with Acumatica as well. And you mentioned in that optimizing the processes and rethinking how we can do that in the confines of your new software solutions is a good thing, because we need to, yes, we can customize both solutions. We can customize Acumatica, we can customize e-commerce, we can customize the integration to some extent, but are we trying to rebuild everything from scratch, or are we just making tweaks? And I think this is huge. I think the real success lies in the middle ground, where we look at the strength of the systems we have at our operations and trying to marry them somewhere in the middle ground. If both are flexible enough, meaning our client is flexible and we're flexible in changing the system, and client is flexible in changing their operations, then it's always a success. And I think that was huge in VanCafe projects, and a lot of our clients who are on this call can testify to that, even though their mics are muted.
No, and I agree with that. There was a lot, we want it to go this way, and we needed to look again at the capabilities of both things and how that would work for the ease of use for us too, and how that worked for the ease of use. Like, maybe we need to tweak something a little bit, or maybe change the process a little bit more this way. It was honestly a really great learning experience. It was really intense again, but the processes and creating those for a business was great, and for creating those for a medium-sized business. And I hadn't really worked in manufacturing before then either. So seeing the pieces of that and seeing what Acumatica and BigCommerce could do together.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's almost like rewriting processes from scratch, so you're able to think about how to create those sustainable processes over time instead of just kind of those patchwork solutions. So I really appreciate you both kind of sharing that experience. I think that really brings this a little bit more to life in terms of what we're talking about. And so Yuri, you really mentioned how there's a lot of flexibility in these systems. And I think in one sense of flexibility, you mentioned integrations and how the integration between VanCafe's BigCommerce site and Acumatica was set up. But can you just talk about integration options in general, and where you kind of see benefits or real world experience in dealing with the different type of connectors that are out there?
Yeah, I would say there are basically 3 different types of connectors for e-commerce from Acumatica. The first choice usually is the native connector, and Acumatica has native connectors for BigCommerce and Shopify. Shopify doesn't matter what the level of subscription is, Shopify Basic or Shopify Plus. Same for BigCommerce. So they have those 2 connectors. They're pretty solid products. They have been on the market for a few years now. Actually, PC Bennett have done one of the first implementations of the Shopify connector and one of the first of I think the first Shopify connector and one of the first BigCommerce ones. So we've been through the life cycle of development of this product since the beginning, and they have matured a lot. So the first choice is usually the native connector. There is another option to integrate with e-commerce sites. That would be something that we call the ISV solution. That's when you have a company who builds a customization for Acumatica that allows to connect to some e-commerce systems. And we have those. You can go to Acumatica Marketplace and find out. You have those for Shopify. You have those for WooCommerce and some for Magento. So that's another option to integrate. And then a third option, which is, I'll talk about pros and cons and why we would go with one or the other. But the third option is an iPaaS solution, as we call it, and it's an integration platform as a service. So that's when you have some kind of middleware that lets you connect to different systems. Lets you connect to Acumatica, to e-commerce, to your CRM solution, to your manufacturing suite, doesn't matter, a lot of different systems. And then it serves as a hub for data processing, right? So all of those options are on the table. And I think what's really important is if you are starting this process or thinking about connecting your e-commerce to ERP or implementing ERP and knowing that you will have an e-commerce in the future, you need to be consulting with someone or some company who has done all of those different things and know the pros and cons to find the best approach for them. Because sometimes we would say native solution is the best for you. Or sometimes I would say, no, you should really go with an iPaaS, because there are some pros to that approach. And I can dive deeper if we want to.
Yeah, I actually think that would be really great. Like, kind of in what instances would someone choose like something like an iPaaS solution versus a native connector? And same with like middleware. You know, I think there's been conversations with some of our clients on options like Celigo or Pipe17 or Boomi and options like that. So can you kind of go into the difference there, or advantages, I guess?
Yes. So first, let's talk about this middle approach when you have an ISV solution, right? You have connectors to Magento and WooCommerce, and you have even Shopify connectors there on the marketplace. That approach, I think, only makes sense when you need to connect to something that doesn't have a native Acumatica connector, but you need pretty simple connection. And what I mean by that is it's easily defined. You don't have a lot of data transformation happening in between the systems. So if think about a native connector, you have a certain things that are integrated. Acumatica provides you with a list of entities that are integrated with your e-commerce and different fields that can be synced and different directions of the sync. So if that is enough for you, for your business processes, but you have the WooCommerce side, or you have Magento, or you have something else, then ISV could be a good option. Now, the difference between a native connector and an iPaaS is in flexibility and this hub and spoke infrastructure. And what I mean by that is if you need to connect multiple different systems together, the hub and spoke makes sense. So think about, you have Acumatica ERP, you have an e-commerce site, but you also have eBay, you have Amazon, you probably have another website, you have another WooCommerce site, you have some marketplaces, Newegg, you have Target, you have Walmart. So you have a bunch of different things where you sell your products. In addition to that, you have your CRM system that is separate, or your marketing system that is separate, but it needs to pull data from all the other systems that you have in your infrastructure. In that case, you need something in the middle that can talk to all of the systems efficiently and potentially transform the data. So the flexibility is another reason why you would go with an iPaaS. So think about, you have certain rules in your Shopify or BigCommerce stores that, based on the product or based on the customer location or based on the ship to address, you need to change how that order is presented in Acumatica. The native connector have some flexibility, but not a lot of flexibility there. The iPaaS solution basically lets you change your order on the fly and then push it to Acumatica, right? And we have done that with Workato, with Celigo. We have been looking at other solutions, like you mentioned, Pipe17, Boomi. All of those different platforms are also for different purposes. So it's not like you don't know at the beginning of the process which solution to go for. We need to do a discovery and find out what is the best option for you. The native connector on the other side, the advantage of that is that you have it built into Acumatica. So it's a native Acumatica code. It's fast. So it's not an added layer between your e-com and ERP. It's inside Acumatica. The management is a lot easier. You don't need to have an IT person that knows how to work in Workato or Celigo. Usually those things require an internal IT person or even a group of IT people to manage, right? And in addition to that, with a native connector, it's fast. When the Acumatica does the upgrade, it's upgraded automatically, so you don't worry about that stuff. And it gives you some flexibility as well. Like most of you know that there is mapping in Acumatica that happens for each entity that we can do to change on the fly how the orders coming in, how the customers coming in, how the shipments are pushed out. So yeah, those are the difference.
Yeah, I appreciate you going into such great detail there. I think it can be a little confusing trying for clients to determine like what solution really works best for them. And so I think one message to really take away from what you just said is that importance of having open dialogue between client and VAR on our end, just to make sure that we can really like dive in through discovery calls, like you were saying, and to what is kind of that best connector that makes the most sense for their business. So again, thank you very much there. I would like to kind of change pace a little bit, Ingrid, and talk a little bit about omnichannel. I think around the COVID pandemic, we were all cooped up inside. And so omnichannel kind of became this buzzword in terms of reaching multiple different locations in once. And so if you could briefly explain like what an omnichannel approach actually is, kind of like from a definitional sense, and then kind of go into why clients would choose to go venture into that space, I think would be a great way to take this conversation.
Sure. So omnichannel, it's kind of a gray area, right? So omnichannel and multi-location are different things. Omnichannel is kind of what was referred to 15 years ago as your marketing umbrella. So you're giving your customers kind of the same experience at all touch points. Yuri had already brought this up, but if they, buy online, they can return in store, or if they buy in the store, they can see what they've ordered online in their online account. So it's really all the touch points. And it also refers to your social, your marketing, the experience they have when they come to your website via chat. You want the same experience over email and phone. So that's kind of your omni-channel. Multi-location is talking about the very technical part of selling on multiple platforms, whether that's from one place, one system that you're using to sell on all the platforms, or you're selling on, really that's what it is. It's using one location, like say in BigCommerce or Shopify, you can sell on Amazon, you can sell on eBay, that kind of thing. You can sell on Facebook, you can put a feed out on Instagram, that kind of thing. So multi-location is when you're going to multiple platforms. That's really the difference between the two, and they kind of go together, obviously. So multi-location is a omni-channel strategy that you have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it does. And I think especially Yuri and I were having a conversation the other day about building trust between companies and the amount of touch points that it can take to do that. And I think Yuri was at 13.
Yeah,
Ye-
that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
You
so it
know, and
takes
I
like,
think it used to be, again, this 15, 20 years ago, I think it used to be 3, and it's really ramped up, and the way that we use that we shop online is really different.
yeah, I think technology has just evolved to a point where we need to have a little bit more of like a omni approach where it is all encompassing and it really does touch a consumer wherever they may be. I mean, frankly, I buy stuff off Instagram all the time, and what really makes me feel comfortable in doing that is understanding that if I go to that site's website, it's really the exact same experience. So to your point, you're building trust and credibility with buyers, which I think is incredibly helpful in terms of creating brand loyalty as well and getting
Yeah,
recurring customers.
it's making a really reputable brand identity too, which is a big thing, especially because you can shop anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate you going into so much detail there, but then to get kind of into the specifics of what kind of this is more of like a multi-location thing for what our clients would experience, but also omni-channel is how orders can be fulfilled. I know, Yuri, when it comes to Amazon, there's a couple different methods in which you can fulfill orders, whether it be fulfilled by Amazon or fulfilled by the merchant. And so if you could kind of go into the difference between those two aspects of delivery, and then also how we as PC Bennett are kind of looking at that with our clients.
Yes, I can explain that. I think before I do that though, I need to mention that we have seen a surge in requests about the multi-location and omni-channel presence in the last year. And I think the reason for that is you mentioned the lockdown and COVID and all of that. People have been buying a lot online recently, and our clients see that they need to be present on different platforms, give the ease for their clients to put the order wherever they feel like would be the best platform for them. And we have been getting a lot of requests about Amazon and eBay and even other marketplaces like Walmart and Targets and Nordstrom's and all of those. So we are implementing a few solutions that allow that to happen, with having you Acumatica ERP serving as the source of truth for most of your financial and then master data, like your customers and products, your product descriptions, but then having your e-commerce solution kind of like a hub for all of these different marketplaces. Both BigCommerce and recently Shopify, they now support the feed management for Amazon and eBay, and sometimes other platforms as well. Or there are solutions like a third-party solutions that allow that to happen. And when you have large catalogs, so think about thousands and thousands of products, maybe rich content on the product pages, you have different requirements for Amazon, you have different requirements for eBay. Your website could look completely, not completely, but different in how it presents the product data. So we have seen, again, a surge in requests about the product information management solutions. And we have ways to integrate into those as well. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah. And I think we're all moving there to a point where, like e-commerce has become prevalent, this multi-channel will become widespread, and pretty much everyone will be selling in a few different channels in the future. So going back to your question, the Amazon, some of the listeners know this, but Amazon has a few different ways you can cooperate with them. One that is really hard to get to is called the vendor relationships. That's when Amazon becomes your buyer. So they buy from you, from your brand, and then they sell your product. When you work with Amazon in that fashion, it's called the Amazon Vendor Central. It's a completely different ballgame. So that's, think about like you have relationships with Walmart, which means you are probably a huge company. You can do that with Amazon as well. Haven't seen that happen a lot, although some of our customers do have those relationships with Amazon. But most popular ones are what we call FBA and FBM, which is confusing for some people. What does it mean? Well, it simply means fulfilled by and then either Amazon or fulfilled by merchant. M stands for merchant. And that's when you list your products on Amazon, and then you can have two options. You can either send a certain portion of your inventory to Amazon, and then they decide how they distribute it across different warehouses across America, or wherever you sell. And then when the order comes in, Amazon fulfills that order for you, and then they pay you when the order is fulfilled. The fulfilled by merchant is, again, you're listing your products as with FBA, but when the order comes in, you get the notification and you fulfill that order, and you tell Amazon, hey, here's my shipment number or check-in number. The order has been fulfilled. So those are two different ways to work with Amazon. Again, I've seen that for expensive items, it's mostly the FBM, because merchants want to have full control of their inventory. They probably don't have a lot of that inventory just sitting on their shelves. For less expensive items, think about some widgets, some small items, say under $50. A lot of those merchants use FBA a lot because their margins are pretty good, that they can afford using FBA. I have to say also that FBA costs you money. So Amazon charges you for storing your inventory, for shipping your inventory. They're even charging you extra if you are not using their shipping solution. So, but I mean, I personally have been selling on Amazon for a long time, Amazon and eBay and other marketplaces. And that's something that is interesting when we're talking to our customers or prospects, to hear the same issues that I experienced in my previous career. And I can say that we have some solutions for you in there. So if you are interested, we should be talking. Also, I have to mention that Acumatica has built a connector for Amazon natively. And I know some of you guys here on this call have been trying different ways to integrate with Amazon. And historically, it's been ISVs. So you had to use some kind of a third-party solution to integrate with Amazon. Not a lot of success there, but we have seen that Acumatica has built a solution, and it seems to be very robust. It serves both FBA and FBM, and we are currently in the process of implementing two of those for two different clients. So I will have some updates later this year, but we might have a good chance with Amazon integration probably next year, beginning of next year.
Yeah, and so is that native connector released within the past 12 months, like this in 2023?
It's been in works for a couple of years now, and primarily because Amazon is really hard to work with. Like they have just, it's very hard to work with. And I think a lot of ISVs have failed with their solutions specifically because of that. Amazon is not flexible at all. They make changes to their API as they wish without any notification. So that just, we as PC Bandit at one point thought about building our own solution because we couldn't find a good one. And then we started talking to Amazon, and it's very difficult. So yes, Acumatica has built a native solution. They have been working with Amazon for a couple of years now. We tried this process about a year ago, but the solution was not ready yet. So it sounded like like MVP was there, the minimum viable product was there, but not enough for real business to use it. This time, I think they cover most of the boxes for the integration, and it's currently in what Acumatica calls managed availability. And some of you might know this term, but that's when Acumatica rolls out new features and they say, hey, we have these new features, but we need to be involved in implementing them because we are learning also through those implementations. That's how we did our couple of first Shopify implementations and BigCommerce. That was our team plus Acumatica team plus the client team who were involved in the same project. So right now, Amazon Connector is in that managed availability, and we are thinking about 24R1. That's when it will become the general availability. So
Okay.
anyone will be able to use it. Right now, you have to sign up to get on that program and use that connector.
Yeah, and just as a reminder for the audience, 2024 R1 probably comes out next spring around April-ish. And we typically do webinars from PC Bennett side when these major upgrades are released, whether it's the R1 or R2 version. R1 usually comes out in the spring, R2 comes out in the fall. And so you'll surely be getting a couple of emails from me just reminding you that we're having those webinars and that you can learn about those new features that are coming out with each major upgrade that comes out. And so with that, I think we've really covered the pre-prepared questions that we had. So I just want to remind the audience, this is really for you guys. If you have any questions around what you're doing in terms of e-commerce or how to kind of optimize your website's performance, we have two great experts on the call today who are more than happy to answer your questions. We did get a couple sent in ahead of time, so I'd love to kind of hit on those first and then just see if additional questions from the audience roll in. But Ingrid, I think this probably is more focused towards you. And it's what can we do to ease our customer service team when there is such a high volume of orders once they launch a e-commerce website?
Right. So going back to the processes I was talking about, creating clear processes so that there's less time scrambling to figure out what to do in certain situations. Implementing a lot of online things, chat, making sure your chat has a feature in which you can put in, kind of robo answers in a way. So you can autofill answers when people use certain terms, teaching your chat what terms, which should go where. Are they looking to figure out a return? Do they need some information on a product? That kind of thing. That can ease a lot. It seems like a lot at first if you're not used to chat and that you're actually taking on more. But if you build that chat out well enough, you'll actually take on less. Making sure you have a really good FAQs page on your site. Making sure that you're clear, writing down all of those. And, whenever you launch a new site or working with the regular site, making sure that you're writing down most of the customer service inquiries that you get and organizing those well for them so people can find them, those top and most common ones. That can alleviate a lot of stress on the phone, via email, doing an autoresponder via email, using a customer service platform in which if someone puts in their email, again, say they mentioned damage or something, that the autoresponder goes right to, here's what happens if we notice you said damaged in your email. Here's a good article on what you do about damaged products and what the shipping process and return process is. So making sure you build those out, that's going to alleviate a lot. And that's, again, coming back to what I said earlier about planning, because sometimes you don't think about a lot of this stuff until after launch, when it gets even busier, when you kind of are looking for that end goal of like, oh, we've launched. And then you're like, wait, we have so much to do still. So writing out those processes, writing out what people are and what your customer is really asking, building dynamic things so that they can hopefully help themselves and then reach someone at the end, when they've already exhausted their options. Making sure you're there, someone in chat, if they're not finding what they're looking for, you also have a button that says, can't find what you need, chat live right now, that kind of thing. But for the most part, you would be surprised at how many customers will try to self-serve and try to figure it out on their own. People are getting used to not calling in and talking to live people now. So when they do, they kind of don't even go to that option sometimes. They'll go the dynamic way first.
Oh, I mean, I sometimes I'm even that way. I'll be completely honest. It can be just easier, and hop into a chat box. But I guess with a chat box specifically, and is that something that comes kind of pre-packaged with some of these e-commerce offerings, or are these something that have to be stood up completely from scratch by the company?
Well, this is a third-party solution, so a plugin, and there are a number of them, that depending on what you're looking for, depending on what you need it to integrate with, depending on the ease of use, depending on how many customer service representatives or team members you have working there. But this is a third-party plugin. And most are really inexpensive, actually. And there's even some that are relatively free. You'll have branding on them that's not your own, that kind of thing. But finding out what you need in your chat first, what it needs to integrate with, and how many team members you have, and then pricing it out. A lot of clients that I work with budget is kind of the big driver of things like this. You know, do they have the budget to do this? How much is implementation going to cost, and how much time is it going to take? What do we need to get ready for it? So those are things to ask yourself before diving into what plugins would suit you. And then it's going to matter what e-commerce solution you're on, and what their plugins are. So that's really, third party is really the way to go with that.
Yeah. And then just to kind of ask another like actual site building question, it's what I think site mapping can be something that is viewed as kind of sometimes standard operating procedures, but then is also overlooked at times. And so can you talk about the importance of site mapping and what that does for one's website and e-commerce site?
Sure. So there's two different ways to kind of refer to site mapping, like omnichannel and multi-location.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you could be talking about the technical sense of submitting a sitemap, making sure it's on Google Search Console and your SEO kind. And then you could be talking about your sitemap when you're building your site. And I think this is what you're speaking of. You know, making sure, again, taking that customer journey and looking at the basics. What does your main navigation look like? What are the drop down menus like? Where does that lead? Where does that lead people? And building out your full site before trying to just get in there and be like, okay, we have a homepage, we have our product pages, we have our privacy policy, and that's all we need. You know, making sure you know the site map and the architecture of your site and where landing pages need to live, following that customer journey to see what makes sense. You can watch that. Again, there's a lot of free or inexpensive software in which you can watch heat maps and recordings on your site to figure out where people are going. So after you launch, you know, it's really good to let it go for a couple months, not really let it go, but then come by and look, you know, what are your top pages? Where are people really going? Why are they not going to this video or this product page you've set up, even though you have a homepage banner for it? You know, like, where are people going and where are they traveling? And understanding your customer, understanding their journey and how you can kind of pave that for them. So looking at your analytics, that's another big thing, obviously. But yeah, mapping out your site in the very get-go before you even think about your new website is really what you want to do. What kind of content do you have? What do you need to build?
Yeah. And so, you know, you brought up the SEO factor for it, and I understand that can be kind of like a more convoluted area, but there were a couple of people who signed up for this webinar that are in kind of the communications and marketing world. So I would actually kind of like to dive into that. How does sending a sitemap to Google kind of improve someone's SEO or domain authority?
Sure. So when you send it to Google, you can actually submit it yourself. Everyone should have a sitemap URL that shows all of their pages, because it can crawl the pages. First of all, the main bot that Google sends out a bunch of spiders, right? You guys all know this, and so I'm speaking in really, really basic terms, but those spiders crawl your site and then come back and tell that main bot what's going on. And then that main bot deciphers where your site should be versus your competitor's site. So the sitemap allows the bots to clearly see what you have on your site, where you have it, what the navigation and what the system is to get there, how many links you have from one page to another page, how much you're interlinking things, how much you have backlinks, new links coming from other sites coming to your site, you know, that kind of thing. Your sitemap can tell them all of that. It just makes it easy for those bots to understand your site. If you don't have it, or you have something on your sitemap that's different from your main navigation, it confuses them and your ranking could go down versus your competitors' rankings. And it's really easy to manage. You know, Google Search Console makes it really easy for you to put one up there, and then it can tell you if there's errors.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate you going into that detail.
I hope that's helpful. It wasn't too technical, because sometimes I know, and there are people on this call that probably are technical, but there's probably a lot of people that aren't. And SEO is kind of, I would say it's kind of akin to going to the mechanic if you don't know how to fix cars, right? You just kind of have to listen to someone who you think knows better than you do about what you need to do. And they throw out a lot of jargon at you, but it's really pretty simple. It just is a complicated and long process to see results from it.
Yeah, well, I really do appreciate you going into that detail. I mean, I was able to digest it, so I'm sure our audience could too. So that's great. And with that, it doesn't look like there's any more questions that are coming in. So I guess, Yuri, in terms of kind of that e-commerce and ERP connection, are there kind of any final thoughts to wrap this up in terms of how our clients can really work towards optimizing how those two solutions interact with each other?
Well, there is a number of things you can be thinking about or doing. And it depends again on what kind of an integration solution you have. If it's a native connector, first of all, look at what Acumatica rolls out with every new release, because they do introduce some changes. And I know that people who are using Acumatica usually have a subscription to their email notifications from Acumatica, and they send out those that information about new features and what will be supported in this new version. For instance, one of the recent updates that we're going to see in 23R2 is the inventory adjustment factor. And let me explain. Some of you have that problem and they wanted a solution. So say you have a number of products in Acumatica, you have inventory in Acumatica, but you know that the speed with which you are selling those products online and offline as well is very high. So there is often a situation when you oversell stuff on e-commerce. It's not a problem usually in ERP, because if somebody calls you or sends you an email or walks into the store, you can quickly check what Acumatica has as far as inventory counts. But the inventory in e-commerce can be lagging. Just a few seconds is enough for somebody to place an order. So what Acumatica has done in this new version is that they have added a new field to the e-commerce tab on your products that says, here is my inventory adjustment. And you can put something like -2, which means whatever the quantity you have in Acumatica, this connector will deduct 2 and then send that data to BigCommerce or Shopify, so that the quantity in your e-commerce is slightly less than you actually have, which gives you more flexibility in how you manage your inventory, right? So that's one thing. Keep looking at what Acumatica is rolling out, and then talk to us about the upgrades. If you have a native solution, but you feel like it's limiting you, then let's talk about some other options like an iPaaS. Maybe you need a more flexible solution. Maybe you need to be able to communicate with different clients differently, your customers differently. Maybe you need different orders to come in differently into Acumatica. We can talk about that. I should mention that iPaaS is obviously more expensive than the native connector. Like, that's a given. But it gives you more flexibility, and it gives you that hub and spoke infrastructure that lets you connect other systems as well to the mix, add them to the mix. Yeah, and I mean, as far as the e-commerce store goes, most of you guys know that we have been building e-commerce sites for a few years now. I have personally had a lot of experience before joining PC Bennett doing this. So if you are currently working with someone else but need an agency that knows ERP area as well, feel free to talk to us. Or if you don't have an agency that you are working with and you need help with your e-commerce store, we're absolutely open to help you out with anything. Just ask. We have a wide variety of different services that we provide. Ingrid can testify to that. We built their site from zero to going live.
Yep.
And ERP at the same time. So we went live on the same date. I think it was January 3rd. Very beginning of the year.
It's the very beginning of the year, and I think we were pushed back. And I remember telling my team, like, you guys, I think we have to push back. We need like at least maybe another month. And everyone's like, no. I'm like, we really do know. It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot. And Yuri's team was fantastic to work with. So
Yeah, and I mean, Van Cafe specifically, the client that you two are talking about, they had tremendous results even within the first 3 months after releasing their new their big commerce site. I remember seeing some case study around that on our website. So I'll be sure to share that link with everyone who's on the call once we wrap up. But it doesn't look like there's any more additional questions, so I'd love to just close out the call by saying thank you to everyone who came and for listening to Yuri and Ingrid share their knowledge around e-commerce and ERP. I think it was a really beneficial conversation just to kind of help everyone wrap their heads around something that can be complex, but also can be simple. And so just being able to talk brass tacks, I think that's a great thing that you both did, was really be able to talk about this at a layman's level, so it's very digestible. So we really appreciate it. I am going to share my screen really quick and just share some emails. So if you have any questions regarding e-commerce or omnichannel, feel free. You can either reach out to your customer success manager. That's Ben at benk@pcbennett.com. You can also reach out to Yuri directly at yurik@pcbennett.com. And then if you have any questions for Ingrid in terms about optimizing your website or e-commerce site, just feel free to reach out to her. Her email's on screen. It's design@ingridgetson.com. And so with that, Ingrid and Yuri, thank you so much. Our audience, we appreciate you attending, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.